Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very accomplished professional from Minneapolis, USA, Alexis Walsko. Alexis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Alexis is the owner and visionary of Lola Red, which is an award-winning PR company. So, Alexis, before we talk about Lola Red and public relations, tell me about your journey and what inspired you to start Lola Red.
Thank you for asking. So Lola Red is a PR firm. I started at the age of 22.
Okay.
So that is more than 20 years ago. And how I got there was actually via an internship when I was in college or university. I went to the University of Colorado and in Boulder. And I studied marketing and entrepreneurship, and they encouraged me to get an internship. And when I got this internship with a skincare company that I was very interested in, they did not need a business plan, which I could write. They did not need a marketing plan. Instead, they wanted to get into national lifestyle magazines. And so I figured out how to do that and started building a network with journalists in national lifestyle magazines and became known in Boulder, Colorado as the girl that could get you in national media. And after working for an ad agency for 6 months, this ad agency announced that they lost their biggest client, were doing layoffs. And so at the age of 22, I went in and volunteered to be laid off. 2 weeks later, I started Lola Red, knowing that I had this skill from my college internship. And we had our first client within 2 weeks.
Wow.
So that's how I got there. Why it's called Lola Red is that thank you for pronouncing my name correctly, but Alexis Walsko is not necessarily the most glamorous or memorable name. And at the time, being 22, I didn't know that it was appropriate to put my name on the door per se. And so I was thinking of things that I love, and I love Madonna. Her daughter's nickname is Lola.
Okay.
And at the time, I drove a red car. And so I had a graphic artist design a cartoon character that looks like me today. And that became Lola Red.
Wow.
And so it was in the early days of PR when you'd still mail out press releases. Email existed, but it wasn't used to the extent that it's used today. And so I would mail out press releases about my clients, and I would sign every single one, Love Lola.
Wow.
And so it is because of that, and that I think ability, desire, and vision to stand out, that I was able to get incredible attention for my clients, but also for myself as a company. And so within 3 years, we were chosen by the Daily Beauty Bible of the beauty and fashion world. Women's Wear Daily is one of the top 50 firms in the nation.
Amazing. What an amazing story. Yeah.
I literally had a 800 number, an email address, and a website, and I had clients everywhere except for where I was living.
Amazing.
And so,
thank you for sharing this amazing story.
Yeah, and today we have evolved from sort of that health, wellness, and beauty space, and we actually, it's interesting that I talked to you in New Delhi because we have clients around the globe today. So we have a number of clients in Japan, a number in China. We have had them in Berlin and Norway and everywhere because of the work that we do.
Amazing. Thank you. So let's talk public relations now, Alexis. Not that I know much about it, but over the last 4.5 decades that I've been working, one's come across a lot of PR, some good, some bad. So my first question to you, what are the most common mistakes people make when it comes to public relations, and how can one correct these?
thank you for asking that. I'm going to take a step back. So I want to share with you what I believe public relations is. Because for me and the practice and what we practice at my company is thinking about how a company or individual deals with the public around them. And so in today's world, that is through social media, that is through media, whether that be newspapers, magazines, or the online versions of them today, or news programming. And so in understanding that that's the landscape that we're dealing with, to answer your question about mistakes, I think the mistake is not thinking about the impact that you can or will have as a company in business serving consumers. And how you can actually use that impact for betterment, but also being prepared for if there are times or crises that come up, and not thinking about the crisis beforehand, or being prepared if you are a corporation with your kind of chain of command and people, and how you would address a situation that is not desirable. And I mean, the difference between public relations and advertising or traditional marketing is that we let go of control a little bit in public relations, because we are telling a story, and that story can be scripted. We can be clear on what we want people to think, but you lose a little bit of control, because when you are looking to media or influencers or using social media, it is up to their interpretation to then retell that story.
Right.
And so that's but that also, public relations has a significant impact, because quite often you are finding your favorite celebrities or news personalities or media outlets that are telling that story back to you as a consumer. And in that, it gives it additional credibility. So again, to go back to the mistake, it's to not think about how important and how powerful that word of mouth marketing opportunity is.
Well said. Great response. So moving on, Alexis, it is often said that a reputation is difficult to build and easy to destroy. From a PR perspective, what are some of the important qualities a CEO must have?
Yes, well, we are living in the day and age of cancel culture. I don't know if that translates across all of our all of your listeners, but here in America, we are very quick to cancel people and to take them off of their pedestal for whether it is poor behavior, or if it is not statements that are not thought through. So to answer your question of what are the important qualities for a CEO or other leadership to have, I think it is patience, and patience with themselves to think through actions and words that they use. I think it is also the ability for a CEO or leader to embody the brand that they are representing. And so I actually I met with a CEO this week She is a CEO of an emerging burger brand here in the United States. And the colors of the brand are orange. And so her thing is that she and the company bleed orange. And from a leadership perspective, the fact that that is how she lives and embodies the company, I think is essential to her leadership. I also think that it makes her very attractive and the other leaders in the organization very attractive from a PR perspective, because people want to listen and retell her story and the story of the brand that she is building.
Amazing. Well said. Well said. My next question, Alexis, is how important is management of perception in the digital world today?
I love this question because I believe perception equals reality to a consumer.
Correct.
So when you ask the question of how important is it, I think it's everything. There is no difference to a consumer between perception and reality. And when you are in the business of selling products or ideas or services, it is essential that you think about and be prepared and communicate based on perception. Now, when you think about the ethics behind business and PR and marketing and leadership, I think where ethics come into play is when the difference between perception and reality behind the scenes is disjointed or disconnected. And so if you are attempting, and actually interesting that in your background, you worked in the tobacco industry, because in thinking of an industry like that, there were a number of PR struggles, crisis, challenges.
Absolutely.
There were some amazing marketing opportunities and campaigns over the years. Yet as time went on in that industry and behind the scenes, they became knowledgeable about the potential dangers and impact. That ethical equation of what they were showing from a perception perspective and what was reality, that there is tension there, but it's also the perfect example of perception equals reality to a consumer.
Very well said. And since you spoke a little bit about ethics, let me ask you a question related to ethics. That if you are confronted with an ethical challenge that your client is facing, how would you address it?
One of the core values of my company is to lead with honesty and transparency.
Absolutely.
So I need to approach a situation with that value in mind. With that being said, when we have had to address ethical situations, my first step and recommendation to clients is let's figure out like what was right in that situation, what was wrong in that situation, and who takes responsibility for that. And then how do we accept that responsibility and also communicate what our next steps are. So quite honestly, in my business, when we deal with anything that has sort of some ethical questions or boundaries around it, it isn't typically because our client whether they behave, they typically did not behave poorly. It is because of a situation that was outside of their control. And the ethical challenge is, how do we make sure that the public, or who needs to know, gets the information without degrading the brand?
Absolutely. Great communication is what I guess you are talking about, which is so right. My next question is that, PR companies always help managements of organizations to handle either a crisis or to be able to enhance whatever they're wanting to do. My question is, what determines, in your view, that a company or a management is in crisis? And at what stage of the crisis are you called in?
Oh, this is a tough question. Not gonna lie. What determines what is a crisis? I think from a corporate leadership perspective, it is about what is the potential, and crisis has a negative connotation. So what is the potential negative impact on the business? That is what determines crisis. Then the next step from there is, who is impacted by that crisis, and what are, when you're dealing with a big corporation, what are the financial or the people implications that it has, whether the people part of that is a company's employees or if it is their consumers. And so when we are brought on, quite honestly, I would love to be brought on before a crisis happens, because what we're able to do before that is put together a plan on, if and when that happens, what we are going to do. An example is, if you are a multi-unit restaurant and there is a contamination of one of your food sources, whether it is the spinach that goes in your salads, but it is hitting across, that is distributed in multiple restaurants. We know that things like that in the restaurant industry are going to come about. So we can plan beforehand that when that happens, what do we do? So being brought in early is nice, because then we're not dealing with, we need to make decisions on communication, and how do we make a quick statement? Where does it go? And what do we communicate on all of our channels to the public? So that would be our social media, our website, our blog, our newsletters, our, what is happening in all of our restaurant locations. So the answer to your question is to be brought in before a crisis. But quite typically, I think nobody wants to be in crisis.
Absolutely.
So people often think like, oh, I'll manage it when, or that won't happen, or I'll deal with it when it does.
Well said. Well said. So time for 2 or 3 more questions for you. I want to change gears a little bit, and I want to ask you, I remember when I was a young marketer, I'm talking of the early 80s, there used to be full-page advertisements, and we'd have a party to be able to express, anything new or launch something. Today, everything is happening in nanoseconds on social media. Technology is changing everything. My question to you is, how is technology changing public relations and Lola Red?
Yeah, quite honestly, technology changes everything. And so today, I think if there has been sort of a shakeup in this industry in the past 12 to 18 months, it is with the emergence of ChatGPT and the continual strengthening of AI. And so for us, there are a lot of positives to it, because it can help us with communication tools and messaging and it can't do the job of a person, but it can give the starts to something, which I think is always interesting. But also the emergence of technology and everything that lives on our phones and computers and iPads, and that is how we receive our messaging today, also means that the understanding of if a message is sponsored content, a unique looking advertisement versus being an actual PR message that would serve as like a stamp of approval by a third party in credibility building, I think it's confusing. And it is confusing to audiences. And so from a technology standpoint, there are just more and more ways to touch consumers, but how you break through that clutter of communication is the real challenge today. But it's also, I would say, increases the need for a public relations strategy. But in my business 20 years ago, we were just thinking about how do we get a reporter at the New York Times to tell a story. Whereas today in my business, we are thinking about the New York Times and how we get them to tell a story. We're also then thinking about what is the sponsored content that is going to come up when that person is reading that story on the New York Times. Is there an opportunity for us to have sponsored content that will appear to them, that is paid, but that will help to push the message that they read even further? And then there's the social media, which is what they're opting in to see, and how can we get their attention there?
Fantastic. Time for one more question, Lola, and this question is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation. A lot of them are young entrepreneurs, a lot of them are aspiring startups, a lot of them are corporate leaders. My question is, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want a lot of young entrepreneurs or young business leaders to take away from your amazing experience and from our conversation?
I think number 1, I am an entrepreneur in my heart and soul, and I love entrepreneurs. And so I would say dream big and just do it. So that take the leap. One of my favorite quotes is "Leap and the net will appear." So that is lesson number 1. I did it at 22, and it has provided me with an incredible life. Number 2, from a marketing and PR perspective, I think be aware, be thoughtful, and take the time to think about what is the perception that you want people to have of whatever it is that you are creating and doing. And then number 3, man, I just can't help this, but from a humanity perspective, make sure you are having fun. So whatever you are doing, and if it is business leadership, if it is marketing, make sure that you find some joy in it, because it makes the ride and the experience and the days just filled with goodness.
Wow. And on that note, Alexis, and your 3 wonderful lessons for an entrepreneur: dream big, just do it. Second, you said from a marketing and PR perspective, be aware, be thoughtful, and such a powerful line, think about perceptions you want others to have. And the third one, which you said, which I think applies to each one of us, is to have fun in the journey that you have ahead of us. Thank you, Alexis, for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me about Lola Red PR. I mean, it's amazing that you started Lola Red at just 22 years old and you built into such a powerhouse today. Thank you also for speaking to me about so many different aspects of public relations and how they impact corporate businesses and each one of us as human beings. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.